So then, the Project Cars series, probably one of the most polarizing sim racing titles that I think has existed at all in sim racing. You either love it or you swear by it, or you just can't get on with it at all. Me personally, I was an original backer for the first Project Cars game back in, 2011? 2012, around there, I forget when it was, because I love the things that were being said by the guys at Slightly Mad Studios. You know, this game is going to be a full-on simulator, it's going to be weather, it's going to be endurance, all this stuff, and I was totally captured by that. And in the end, we got a game that, in my opinion, didn't quite live up to those expectations. Flash forward a few years, we have Project Cars 2. Same sort of thing happens again. The game is touted to be a fantastic sim title. It comes out, and I think, in my opinion, it missed the mark. But saying that, the games have been improving, so when Project Cars 3 was announced, of course, everyone back on the hype train. Everyone's like, oh, okay, great, now they're going to get it right. Now they're going to get it right with Project Cars 3. No, they didn't. But just before we get into things, I've got to say a massive thank you to ExpressVPN for once again sponsoring one of my videos. Now, if you spend a lot of time browsing online, you probably know what a VPN is already, but if you don't, a VPN is the easiest and most effective way for people to protect their internet traffic and hide their identities online. A perk of ExpressVPN is the ability to change your IP's location, meaning you can enjoy unrestricted access to social media sites, music, videos across the world without any annoying geo-blocking. Me personally, I'm a massive fan of Red Dwarf, but you can't watch that show outside the UK. But with a VPN, you can set your location to the UK, and voila, I can watch my favourite smegheads. If you guys are interested in ExpressVPN and want to get 3 months for free, then check out the link in the description, expressvpn.com/JimmyBroadbent. So first of all, let's talk about driving, because driving's the most important thing for us degenerate sim racers, right? 100%. The driving in Project Cars 3, it feels like it's just not designed for a wheel. The wheel seems almost like it's been tacked on to appease people like me, people who've played the last Project Cars games. But from what I can see, I've not been able to try it myself though, admittedly, it seems very much like a gamepad-based game. Though that being said, the driving on the wheel isn't terrible. There are a couple of cars that I actually quite enjoy driving in the game. The car that I started with in my stream, the Mitsubishi Evo 6.5, the TME edition, that was actually quite fun to chuck around, if not maybe a little bit kind of unrealistic. See how good I am, chat? See how intentional that was? But that's sort of the theme of this game. It's not aiming to be that Project Cars 2 clone or successor. It's meant to be a Shift 2 successor. And funnily enough, some of those weird handling things that came with Shift 2 actually are a little bit present in Project Cars 3. I found when driving some of the faster race cars, the car would hop around a lot in lower gears at lower speeds, almost like there was no tyre grip at all. I was driving the Group C Jag around Daytona, a car that I really enjoyed driving in the previous Project Cars game, and it just felt completely different. It felt like a massive step backwards, a very basic version of what it was in the last Project Cars 2 title. From what I can tell, the cars that I used to like in Project Cars 2 are just not quite the same. They've just been made easier, or maybe had less time spent on them for this game. Saying that though, you still have all the option to map all your buttons. You can have, your lights on here, the full H-pattern shifter, clutch and all that, so you can still drive old cars like old cars. But I noticed as well that if you go for the full H-pattern approach, the AI cheat. They don't need to shift gears down the straight, not the way you do anyway. So if you're in an equal car, you're just going to lose time going down the straights if you want to use H-pattern. So whilst the option is there, it's slower. AI doesn't have to shift, it seems. So I'm being pulled away on a straight line there. Wet driving I found is pretty fun, especially in a four-wheel drive car. You can chuck it around a little bit. But again, it feels like a bit of a simplified version of what was in Project Cars 2. In Project Cars 2, you had the build-up of the rain, and puddles would form as the race would go on, or they'd be dispersed as the race would go on. None of that in this game. That's all gone. None of that at all. And when we talk about driving, we have to take the things that have been taken out of the game. There are no pit stops, there's no tyre wear, there's no engine wear. There is damage, but it's visual only, and you really have to clatter something to get it to show. There's no qualifying either, but there is car tuning. So you can tune your car, suspension settings, etc. But to be honest, it's quite useless in this game because it doesn't really make that much of a difference, I've found, apart from maybe gearing. Next up, let's talk graphics, because graphically this game, again, is a downgrade. There are times where I look at the game in the menus and I think, is this a mobile game? this looks like a mobile game. There's quite a funny but unfortunate moment for Project Cars 3 on stream where I thought I wasn't running on the full settings because the game didn't look very good, and the chat was telling me, Jimmy, go turn the game up. So I thought, yeah, okay, I'll go and turn the game up, I'll go and turn the graphics up. And then it turned out that I was actually on the full settings and the game just looked that way.
Here we go. Oh.
As I said a couple of times on the stream, it very much feels like the game has sort of been downgraded slightly for consoles, which is a bit weird because Project Cars 2 I think looked pretty decent on the console from memory. But some of the models of the cars, like the R34 GTR for example, which I bought towards the end of the stream, it looks terrible. It looked awful. The paint had no reflection, there was no detail in any reflection, anything like that at all. The car looked like it was lifted, for crying out loud. The models, a definite step back, and I don't understand sort of why that is the case, given that they have the models. They have the models from PC too, because a lot of the stuff in here is just recycled content. Speaking of recycled content, most of the cars you get in Project Cars 3 are from Project Cars 2. I think there are a couple of additions in there, but it's about 90% of the car list was in Project Cars 2 and is now in Project Cars 3, but as a worse version, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong though, there are times where this game does look nice, in day-night transitions and stuff like that, but in a lot of places I think it actually looks worse than the first Project Cars game, which, again, for a game that is about 8 or 9 years newer, really kind of isn't acceptable. And that leads very nicely into sounds and immersion. Now, for me, Project Cars 2 had some decent sounds in it. There were cars that sounded fantastic. Again, to quote that Jaguar Group C car that I took around Daytona, that was an awesome sounding car. Some of the Ginettas sounded great as well. The old school sort of 90s IMSA cars sounded cool. None of them do anymore. I drove the R34 GTR and I also drove the R32 GTR, sorry, the HKS Group A car. They just all sound muted. You could have believed before that some of the sounds have real-life samples from Project Cars 2. In Project Cars 3, no, not the case at all. Again, a big step backwards in that category, and that's a real shame for me. I'm a bit of an audiophile in sim racing. I love cars that sound like the real thing because it helps you be in the car, it helps you think about that. But you sort of come to realize as you talk more about Project Cars 3 and the direction that some of the things have gone in, that the focus is not on that anymore. It's not on that immersion, it's on the weird career mode they have involved. From what I can tell, the career mode is actually quite similar to Project Cars 2, where it's just really a series of championships with no real depth to them outside of that. It's basically do this championship, win money, buy a new car, do that championship, win money, buy a new car, and that's really about it. There is some progression in terms of you are progressing up through, you know, the cars and the categories, etc. But again, from what I saw, the customization, none of it doesn't really do anything. So what I mean by that is when I, again on stream, I'm going to be referencing that a lot as I have, I drove my beautiful Mint Evo and I wanted to put a body kit on it for more aero. So I went to the menu, went to the aero parts, bought it, nothing changed. The car looked exactly the same, except now I had about 20 more performance points and apparently a big wing on the car, which I couldn't see.
It looks the same. What's the difference? Has that got a different bumper or not? It looks the same to me, right?
I remember somewhere in the very mixed marketing of the game that one of the devs said it was meant to be a successor to Shift 2. Shift 2 had better options for customization than this game has. And that game, I think, is literally 10 years old. And just on the career mode, my experience of the AI so far has been pretty mixed, I must say. I find that if you're in a road car in the lower echelons of the career, even if you put the difficulty on Legendary, which is the highest difficulty that AI have, and a very high aggression setting, they're pushovers. I did a race on stream in the Evo again, and once I passed the AI, I just pulled away. And I think over the course of the race, which was a sprint race, it wasn't even a lap race, I think it was about 2 minutes long or something like that, I pulled out a gap of 8 seconds to second place, and I wasn't driving well, I was crashing and making mistakes and looking at the chat, and I was still able to do that. Yet on other circuits that I think have been in the last Project Cars games, the AI cheat. They have more speed than you in a straight line. They can carry more speed through corners than you. So you find yourself, whilst you're driving at the same ability you had, where you can beat the AI about 8 seconds on the same difficulty, you're now struggling to keep onto the back of them because they can take corners faster than you can. So there's not even challenge there for a single player element. There's either you walk it or you get beaten by AI that don't adhere to the same set of physics that you do. The big question that I take away from this game is, who is this game for? I don't really understand, because it's obviously not for someone like me, not for a sim enthusiast. And the only reason that I'm really talking about it today is because of what the Project Cars series is. It'll be the same thing if someone like iRacing or Assetto Corsa brought out Assetto Corsa 2 or iRacing 2 and it turned out to be, well, this, a mobile game, you know? I can't help but think that it's aimed at people who maybe played Grid, who played maybe Forza Horizon and enjoyed that. But here's the thing, right? The Grid is probably about the same as this game, maybe a bit better than Project Cars 3 from the time I spent playing it anyway. And Forza Horizon 4 is a far better game than this, though of course not as structured in this, and has better customization, a better car list, all those things. So why would you pay €60 to play Project Cars 3 when there are already better games out there? Maybe it was a strategic move from Slightly Mad, knowing they were going to be bought by Codemasters to sort of release a game that would cash in on the Project Cars name and then be done with it. Or maybe it was a genuine attempt to make a arcade game that'd be a bit more accessible than the Project Cars 2 game, which is already fairly accessible, to be fair. But in my opinion, it comes across as a game that couldn't decide whether it wanted to sort of stick to its hardcore roots or maybe go down that arcade route, and as a result doesn't do either of those things particularly well. But those there are my thoughts on Project Cars 3, a game that didn't really know what mark it was going to hit and missed it anyway. Now, I encourage you guys in the comments to give me your opinions on Project Cars 3 based on what you've seen, maybe what you've played at home, but I ask that you please keep it civil. Not everyone is going to agree on this, that is just the nature of the beast, but you can have that discussion without flaming out someone else. In fact, I saw that Actrovision, who actually quite liked this game, received apparently death threats for saying such on stream, and that is not good enough of the community, and I am in no way representative of the community. But if you're watching this video, then I implore you to not take that attitude about a video game. But anyway, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate you tapping that like button, subscribe as well. I may give Project Cars 3 another go in virtual reality at some point. That's something I haven't tried yet, so I can't comment on that. But aside from that, I don't see myself spending any more time in this game. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Take care, have an awesome day, and I'll see you all next time.